The photo was still loading when I realized my marriage was already over. There was my wife, Emily Carter, smiling beside her boss, Daniel Brooks, at a rooftop bar in downtown Chicago. Her caption said, "Some partnerships just make life better. My work husband." I stared at that sentence for nearly a minute. Then I opened the drawer beside my desk, pulled out the envelope I had prepared 3 weeks earlier, and placed it on the kitchen table. Inside were the divorce papers. I wrote one sentence on a yellow sticky note: "I hope you find what you're looking for." Then I went upstairs. I didn't slam a door. I didn't call her. I didn't send an angry text. Because the hardest part wasn't discovering that Emily had crossed a line. It was realizing how long I had been pretending not to see it. Emily and I had been married for 9 years. We met at Northwestern during a freezing February, when neither of us had enough money for decent coffee. She was ambitious, funny, and impossible to intimidate. I was quieter. I worked long hours building a small software company from our apartment while Emily climbed the corporate ladder. When our daughter Sophie was born, Emily cried harder than I did. She whispered, "We're going to give her everything." And I believed her. For years we were a team. Then Daniel Brooks became her boss. At first, I liked him. He was confident, successful, and charming. Emily started coming home talking about him constantly. "Daniel says I'm ready for the executive track. Daniel thinks I should lead the new division. Daniel and I make an incredible team." I always smiled. But eventually, work began taking Emily away from home. Late dinners, weekend conferences, texts after midnight, and then came the phrase I hated most: "Don't be insecure, Michael. He's my work husband." I never asked what that meant. I was afraid of the answer. The next morning, Emily walked into the kitchen, wearing the same black dress. From the she stopped when she saw the envelope. Her face changed. "What's this?" I poured coffee. "Something you should read." She opened it. Her hands began shaking. "Michael, I don't want to fight. You're divorcing me?" I finally looked at her. "You posted the answer yesterday." Her eyes filled with tears. "That picture wasn't what you think." "Then explain it." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, and somehow that silence hurt more than the photograph. She grabbed her purse. "I need to go to work." I nodded. She reached the doorway. Then she turned around. "You're making a mistake," I answered quietly. "No, I'm finally making a decision." She left. I thought that was the end. I was wrong. At 9 o'clock that morning, Daniel Brooks called an all-hands meeting. Every employee in Emily's division was ordered into the conference room. Emily sat near the front. Daniel walked in carrying a folder. Nobody knew why. Then he locked the conference room door. Emily noticed. Her stomach dropped. Daniel placed the folder on the table. "I've spent the last 6 months investigating financial irregularities inside this division." The room went silent. Emily looked confused. Then Daniel said a name. "Hers, Emily Carter." She stood. "What?" Daniel didn't blink. "We found unauthorized expense approvals connected to your executive account." Emily's face went white. "That isn't possible." Daniel turned toward the screen. A series of transactions appeared. Huddled rooms, private dinners, luxury transportation, and one payment that made Emily's blood run cold. It was made from a company account, but the recipient wasn't a hotel. It was a private consulting firm, a firm owned by Daniel Brooks. Emily whispered, "You told me those expenses were approved." Daniel looked at her. "I told you to trust me." Then he closed the folder. "And that's exactly what you did." Emily wasn't fired. That was the part nobody understood. Instead, Daniel suspended her access to every executive system and ordered an internal audit. Then he made one final announcement. "Effective immediately, Emily Carter is no longer reporting to me." She exhaled. For 1 second she thought she had survived. Then Daniel continued, "She will report directly to the board." The room erupted in whispers. Emily stared at him. "Why?" Daniel leaned closer. "Because the board wants to know everything you know." And suddenly, Emily understood. She hadn't been protected. She had been isolated. That evening, Emily came home early. She found me sitting at the kitchen table. She dropped her purse. "Michael, I need to tell you something." I waited. Daniel wasn't my work husband. I almost laughed. "Emily, he manipulated me." She explained everything. Daniel had promised her a promotion. He convinced her that the only way to prove herself was to approve unusual expenses. He told her the paperwork was legitimate. Then he used her credentials to hide millions of dollars in questionable transactions. But there was something worse. Emily had signed some of the approvals. She could lose her career, maybe even face criminal charges. She sat across from me, crying. I was stupid. I stared at the woman I had once promised to grow old with. "No," I said. "You were willing to believe someone else because you stopped believing me." She looked down. I know. For the first time in months, there was no anger in her voice, only regret. Then she reached into her purse. "I found something." She placed a flash drive on the table. This was on Daniel's office computer. I looked at her. What is it? Emails. I plugged it into my laptop. Hundreds of messages appeared, and then I saw my name. Daniel had been tracking me, my company, my investments. Even the apartment Emily and I owned. One email said, "Once Emily becomes division head, Michael Carter's company will be our next acquisition target." I froze. Emily covered her mouth. This had never been about romance. It had been about control. Daniel had been using Emily to get close to my business. And suddenly, the divorce papers weren't the biggest thing sitting on that table. The next morning, Emily and I met with an attorney. She expected me to destroy her. Instead, I asked one question. Can we protect our daughter? The attorney nodded. If Emily cooperates fully with investigators, there's a chance. Emily began crying. You still care about me? I looked at her. I care about the woman I married, she whispered. She's still here. I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. 3 weeks later, federal investigators entered Daniel's office. His company accounts were frozen. The board removed him. The investigation revealed that he had been running a fraudulent acquisition scheme through shell companies for years. Emily's cooperation helped expose it. She lost her position, she lost her reputation, but she kept her freedom, and, eventually, she started rebuilding her life. As for us, we didn't magically fall back in love. Real life doesn't work that way. We separated. We went to counseling. We learned how to speak without attacking. And most importantly, we learned how to be parents without making Sophie pay for our mistakes. 6 months later, Emily came to my house for Sophie's birthday. She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph. It was from our first year of marriage. We were sitting in that tiny Chicago apartment, eating cheap pizza on the floor. On the back she had written, "I lost myself trying to become someone important. I should have remembered who was beside me before I became successful." I looked at her. She smiled sadly. "I don't expect you to take me back." I nodded. Good. Her eyes dropped, then I added, "But I haven't decided that our story has to end here." She looked up. For the first time in a long time, neither of us was pretending. We were simply two people standing at the ruins of something we once loved, and wondering if, brick by brick, we could build something honest. Not the marriage we had before, something better, something real, because sometimes betrayal doesn't reveal who you thought your partner was. Sometimes it reveals who both of you have to become, and sometimes the most painful ending isn't an ending at all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below.